They feel more grounded. They see themselves more clearly. They feel more confident in their own skin. They stand on their own 2 feet better. They are at more peace with their sexuality and who they are. Their wives take notice and often make changes and adjustments themselves too. Everyone, welcome to this podcast episode of Get Your Marriage On. I'm so happy to be with you today. I just got back from our Dallas Fort Worth couples retreat, and it was so amazing. 20 couples joined us in Granbury, Texas for a wonderful weekend. And we had really good instruction, we had coaching, we had really good meals. And on top of that, we had yoga one morning, we had dance instructors come and teach us. We had a live band play the last night and a lot of other surprises too. The hotel resort was awesome. We rented out the entire place, so it felt really private. It was really cool just to see how we bonded. Yes, we had a lot of fun, but more importantly, I think everyone that came walked away changed. It's hard to put in words to describe, like how couples felt about each other. You'd see it in the way they held each other's hands and the way they laughed and interacted. You can just see this glow around every single couple. Let me share with you a few things in my attendees' words of how they say this weekend went. This is what the first person said. Dan talked about sex in a way that I've never heard it taught before. It helped me see that growing sexually and growing spiritually go hand in hand. I've never appreciated my sexuality in this way before. This has opened up some of the deepest, most meaningful conversations I've ever had with my husband after being married over 20 years. Another person said, every couple needs this. You need to constantly add more tools to your marriage toolbox, and this retreat gives you a toolbox full for you to explore and take your marriage to the next level. It's a safe space to talk about hard topics and to be open and honest with yourself and your spouse without any judgment or ridicule from others. It's also just a blast and a lot of fun to meet new people that all have a common ground and they want to improve their marriage. Another person said, whether you've been married for a year or 40 years, this retreat is worth coming to. The information they cover goes very deep and will help you and your spouse figure out how to get to the root of your problems. Also, it's helpful to know that you're not the only couple that is having a hard time understanding each other, fighting a lot, or struggling with sex. And here's one more I'll share with you. Our weekend was worth far more than the time and the cost. We go on weekends away a few times a year. This training is way better than anything else we have done. We talk more, we communicate more, we understand more, and we love way better. Registration is now open for our spring couples retreat in beautiful, sunny, and warm St. George, Utah. You'll find all the details on our website, getyourmarriageon.com, and click on Couples Retreat. Through coaching, I interact with a lot of men that are in otherwise happy marriages, but wish things were better sexually. I'm thinking of a particular man. He's a successful business owner, and he and his wife are raising 4 wonderful children together. He and his wife go on dates often even. Sex, though, isn't as frequent as he'd like. From his perspective, she was brought up in purity culture and has a difficult time embracing her sexuality. He feels bad asking for sex all the time. And when they do have sex, it's fine for the most part, although he's got a growing list of other things he wants to try with his wife in bed. And I can totally relate, because I have been there. I've been the one pushing or pulling for this or that in my own marriage. And also because I didn't know any better, my attempts to improve our sex life often backfired. For example, there was a time shortly after we're trying to figure out our sex life, I really went, deep into figuring out what a great sex life would be for us. Of course, I took that upon me. And I bought this book. It was a fantastic sex book written by someone I trust. Anyway, I'd read that book and I highlighted and wrote notes in the margin and doggy-eared like sections of the book that I really wanted my wife to read. And then I gave it to her, put it on her nightstand. I hinted about it. I joked about it. I teased her about it. She got the message that I really wanted her to read this book because I thought if she read it, especially the parts that I had highlighted, she would go, "Oh, yes, you're right. I need to work on my sexuality." And she'd see the light and we would have a great sex life. All this came to a head when, in an argument, she just said, "Look, I just don't have time. I don't have time to read that book." And so I countered, "Well, how about I take over all the cooking, all the cleanup after dinner, and I'll do all the meal shopping and meal prep for 2 weeks, because that will give you time to read the book instead of doing all the meal prep. I'll take that on." So she, in a huff, agreed that she would do that. And for the next 2 weeks, I did all the meal prep, meal shopping, planning, cooking, cleaning, and everything. Can you see the problem in all this? To make a long story short, this really backfired because I took on a superior air. I approached my wife as if I'm the one that has it all figured out and she's the broken one. I know what's up sexually and she doesn't. And no matter how hard my wife would try, she would never quite catch up to me because I would always, in our relationship, prove that I'm a little ahead than her. This was actually working counter to getting to what I really wanted in my marriage, which was a deeper, intimate relationship. Anyway, today, my wife and I are much further along. And even comparing to where Emily and I were 6 months ago till today, we've made huge progress in our relationship. We have such a rich and fun sexual and emotional relationship than we've ever had before. I'm on a mission to help other men get to their next level in their relationships. And there's way too much heartache and poverty in bedrooms, frankly speaking, even in the best of marriages. You may not know this, but I have an in-depth coaching program just for men. I have another cohort launching on Sunday, and I want to invite you to join me in it. The bottom line of the coaching program is for everyone to learn how to love more wholeheartedly, because in the end, what matters most is how loving you are, or how capable of loving you become. A lot of men want to love their wives more, but they're still limited in some way, so I help them expand that capacity for more wholehearted loving in their marriage and their relationship with their wives. Today, I want to give you a small taste of what you can learn in my men's coaching program. I have a 5-step framework I teach. Each step in the framework follows the letters A, B, C, D, E, so it's easy to remember. A stands for awareness, B stands for balanced belonging, C stands for courageous choosing, D stands for developing desire, and E stands for embrace your eroticism. In my program, I teach men to take 100% responsibility for their part of their relationship. It's so easy to fall into the trap of not really investing in the marriage if you feel like you're not getting what you want. It's sort of like my child who won't clean up his plate after dinner because his sister hasn't cleaned up her plate yet either. As if his sister not cleaning up is full justification why he doesn't need to clean up, right? Yet, as childish as that sounds, we do that in our own marriages too. I teach the men that rather than focusing on whether or not their wife feels loved or is loving you in the way you want to be loved, to instead focus on loving your wife wholeheartedly. Do you see the difference in that? A lot of men grow up feeling ashamed for being sexual. In Sunday school lessons or from our culture at large, men get a lot of mixed messages. They are told that there are wild sexual beasts who can go out of control so easily that the safest bet is to clamp down their own sexual natures. On the other hand, they're taught to be the pursuer, to know all the answers to sex, and, to bring their wives incredible pleasure and lots of orgasms in the bedroom. So, I spend a lot of time helping men affirm their God-given sexuality and help them see how their sexuality is a forward motivating force for good. I help them see the connection between spirituality and sexuality. I help them overcome shame and to be unapologetic for wanting good sex with their wives. One man told me after this coaching, he and his wife were with their extended family at Lake Powell. If you're not familiar with this wondrous lake in southeast Utah, it's hundreds of secluded canyons you can only get to by boat. One afternoon, the grandparents agreed to watch the kids so he and his wife could enjoy some time alone, just the two of them exploring a part of the lake. They soon found themselves in a beautiful canyon, just the two of them. They stripped down and decided to go skinny dipping and enjoy some intimate connection in the warm water and on the beach in the sunshine. Now, his old self would have been ashamed for even suggesting the idea to his wife. But in this instant, he and his wife felt so alive, so connected, and so grateful for this part of him, the sexual drive in him, that draws him towards his wife in beautiful and meaningful ways. I teach men how to love their wives well. It's a fact that men aren't usually as verbal in communication as women are, and men are more physical in their communication than women are. I teach men to use the gift of their physicality to show their love to their wives. I teach men that they can't make their wives change, but they can change their participation in a particular pattern. Through coaching, I help them gain more awareness of the patterns in their own marriages that are keeping them stuck. Because once a man can see the pattern and how he's participating in it, he can then develop better strategies. I can help him with better thinking and better habits to avoid that bad pattern or choose a better path when that pattern comes up. Now, there's lots of patterns, but an example of a common pattern I help men see is what I call the avoidance cycle. And I got this idea from Jessa Zimmerman. She's a marriage therapist who's been a guest on this podcast before. When sex isn't going well, we tend to avoid sexual encounters because we don't want a repeat of something gone bad. But the avoidance of sexual encounters, all that does is just mounts up more pressure for the next encounter that it must go better. And because of all this pressure, it makes sexual encounters worse, making you want to avoid sexual intimacy again the next time. So this cycle keeps men stuck in these negative patterns around and around and around. I've heard that around 60% of married men use or have used pornography. Porn use is often connected to a pattern in their life as well that I help men see and overcome in our program. As I've come to understand it, the issue with pornography use usually is nothing to do with sex, really, but it's actually something deeper. As my friend Zach Spafford, a fellow coach that helps couples thrive beyond pornography use, told me, the issue around pornography use is most often very little to do with sex. Often the narrative goes that wives think that if they gave their husband more sex, he'll look at porn less. Now, if only that were true, we'd have a lot easier time overcoming pornography use in a lot of marriages, right? But the reality is that men have become accustomed to using porn for emotional validation, albeit a very cheap form of emotional validation. In a sense, it's not too different than why people turn to food when they're upset or bored or binge Netflix or mindlessly scroll social media to try to escape feelings that they don't want to feel. Unfortunately, men are socialized not to feel their emotions. Men are allowed to have only 3 emotions: angry, happy, or horny, which reminds me of a joke. A man was going to a new therapist, and after a few visits, the therapist suggested that the man attend a mindfulness retreat so that he'll feel better. So he signed up and attended the retreat. He had a good time for the most part, but the mindfulness instructor had him think of past experiences that brought up a lot of anger, resentment, shame, and anxiety. So a week later, he complained to the therapist, "You said I'd feel better after attending that retreat, but ever since that retreat, I felt nothing but angry, resentful, and shame-filled, and this anxiety is awful." The therapist grinned and said, yes, see, you are beginning to feel better. You're getting better at feeling your emotions. Anyway, we know how important emotional connection is in the marriage relationship, but how can a man expect to connect emotionally with his wife if he can't even connect with his own emotions first? Did you know that according to Dr. Brené Brown, there are over 100 types of emotions? I teach men how to connect internally better so they can connect with their wives a lot better. Sometimes men in my program tell me in detail about their deepest yearnings and desires in their marriage, and often their brokenheartedness about the limitations they experience in their marriage. I then ask them if they've ever expressed those feelings to their wife. They look at me frightened and say, "What? You want me to tell my wife these things? You want me to be open and vulnerable with my wife?" Yet, in the same breath, they want their wives to be open and vulnerable with them. I've come to learn that we men have a lot of fear when it comes to opening up and sharing with our wives what's going on deep inside of us. It's often safer to keep all that hidden, deep and far away from the surface. And then a man gets the courage to go deep and bring it up out of the deep into the surface so he can examine it in the light. He gets the courage to share his experience, perspective, and preferences with his wife. This is masculine courage at the core, and he's no longer playing chicken. So, what's the result? Usually not an overnight change in his relationship, but his wife appreciates being with a man that can trust her enough that he can share his depth with her. And a wife appreciates being with a man that no longer treats her condescendingly, as if she's fragile and can't handle his truth. So I spend quite a bit of time teaching men about how sexual desire works in our modern complex world. And it's surprising how little of a quality sex education we've all received. So I make sure to give men an in-depth quality sex ed also. I help them see that sometimes their wives don't have a lot of sexual desire because, frankly, the sex he's offering isn't good sex. I help men learn how to be better lovers in the bedroom. I help them see that really good sex is about connection and pleasure. And I teach them that their wives want to be ravished and be pampered. I teach men how to stay present in the sexual encounter and how to give space for their desire to work its magic too. I also teach them what foreplay really is and how important it is to be connected outside of the bedroom as well as in the bedroom. Not only just when they want to have sex, but foreplay all of the time in positive ways that build that relationship. Let me illustrate this. A past participant, we'll call him Jake, which isn't his real name. He really struggled with standing up for himself in his marriage. He was kind of passive when his wife would push back with him about wanting sex and things like that. On a particular weekend away with his wife, they discussed earlier in the day that they would go out to dinner, then go to the hotel and enjoy a really nice evening of sex. But when they got to the hotel room, his wife started to complain about things, which was kind of her pattern of withdrawing from sex and kind of pushing him away. And then his old pattern would then withdraw, see her complaints as his wife's way of trying to wiggle out of sex again. And then his old self will just sulk the rest of the night, feeling miserable that his plans for sexual connection with his wife were thwarted again. He'd be met with disappointment, and he'd just ruminate all night long. But this time was different. Because of the coaching he received, and because he's trying to grow a backbone, he saw things for what they were. Instead of participating in the old pattern, he told his wife that, you know what, I really want you. I think you're beautiful. And he basically told her to shut up about the complaints. She was shocked because this was really out of character for him. And she promptly undressed, and then they had one of their best lovemaking sessions ever. In the end, what his wife really wanted to feel from her husband was she wanted to feel wanted from him. She wanted him to be more assertive, to overcome barriers to wanting her. And even though her complaining was a really bad way to get what she wanted, he was able to see it for what it was. And his assertive response was really hot for her. And seeing her husband grow a backbone was also super sexy for her. So in this program, we help you uncover all of your patterns that kind of keep you stuck in your relationship. We also cover men's sexual health and strategies to overcome common issues such as premature ejaculation, delayed orgasm, and how to find more pleasure in sex. I also help men realize their own erotic nature, their sexual fantasies, and most importantly, how to unapologetically use them to build a strong relationship with their wives. In the men's program, I give every man a capstone project, and it is this: to plan and execute a romantic getaway sometime during the time we meet together. This is intended to push men a little outside of their comfort zone, and it's a great way of summing up all the learning from the past few weeks into a meaningful and memorable evening with their wives. The men who join this program report big shifts in their relationships. They feel more grounded. They see themselves more clearly. They feel more confident in their own skin. They stand on their own 2 feet better. They are at more peace with their sexuality and who they are. Their wives take notice and often make changes and adjustments themselves too. Their wives often wake up and take notice of the positive changes in their husbands and then make adjustments in their own lives too. Enrollment is open now for the next cohort, and when you sign up, you're going to get weekly 60 to 90-minute confidential group coaching for 12 weeks. You'll be put with a group of men, usually about 10 to 12 men. So it's a big enough group that there's a lot of insight and sharing, but still small enough that it feels really private. And the camaraderie and support you get from this group is amazing. After we meet for 12 weeks, then we meet once a month for 9 months thereafter. So you get to work with me for a total of a whole year. And the goal of this coaching is to help you implement all the principles that we learn together into your marriage in the way you do it. In addition to all this, you get access to a private podcast feed for all the program audio so you never miss a thing. There's also a private message group so you can message all the other men in the group, and it helps you really apply the stuff that we're learning in the program through the message group too. You also get 1 year access to all the videos, audio recordings, and coaching sessions from the group too. And as a bonus, your wife is invited to join our women's only group too. I also have an accompanying course that goes along with the men's coaching program. It's about 8 hours of video content, and I'll mail you an 80-page workbook. In addition, I will also meet with you privately one-on-one for a private coaching session anytime during the 12 weeks, and your wife is welcome to join that too if you like. And you also get access to my next level program. That's the membership program for you and your spouse for a year afterwards. I want to close with a testimonial from Tony. He was a past participant. This is what he said. This coaching program helped me at a critical time in my marriage. More than anything, it helped me understand myself better. It shed light on the pitfalls of my behaviors and patterns that led to disappointment and harbored anxieties. Beyond being able to recognize those, the coaching provided resources and ways to overcome, to change, and to grow into something better. When I applied the things that were taught, I saw great positive growth, not only in myself, but more importantly, in my relationship with my wife. Beyond a top 10 moves list, the coaching provided me with tools and skills to create lasting, meaningful, and exciting experiences that I can enjoy for the rest of my marriage. Dan is a very knowledgeable teacher and extremely approachable and generous with his time. He is invested in the success of his students, which is something I felt on a personal level each week. For more information about the men's coaching program, check out the link in the show notes or email me at dan@getyourmarriageon.com if you'd like to book a free discovery call, and I can answer your questions and anything you have about the program. May God bless you and your marriage, and may you see the wisdom and grace of your sexuality as a force for good in your marriage too. Thank you for listening, and please share this with your married friends. I promise they will thank you for life. Now, go and get your marriage on.